Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay, so we finished chapter 3, and that chapter 3 finished by saying that the obstacle to going forward in spiritual life is lust. And so the chapter 4 starts. I can't put it on. I can't put the same, the information on the book because I can't get online with my computer. It's like I'm having to use the phone. But anyway, I can relate to you what's relevant to this overview. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, so we finished, let me just find it. Right, so this chapter is entitled Transcendental Knowledge. So the point is that we can overcome lust by proper understanding, by knowledge. Ignorance is a cause of sinful life. Ignorance is a cause of lusty activities. If we don't know what to do, we'll definitely do the wrong thing. And even if we do know what to do, the lust is sometimes so strong that we still can't actually avoid doing it. So it's much more, it's more than knowledge, but if we don't have knowledge, we'll not go forward. Unless we understand our situation, we won't be able to go forward from where we are. We won't even understand where we are in this world, which is the situation with most people. So that's the that's the first thing we have to understand. And so there's different ways of obtaining transcendental knowledge. And so that'll be described in the middle of this chapter. So first from 1 to 10 of these verses, we'll describe transcendental knowledge about the goal. This is like Sambandha. We have to understand where we're going. Sambandha means we understand that we're trying to become Krishna conscious. So 1 to 10 discusses that. And then from 11 to 15 verses, it's how to apply transcendental knowledge. And then from 16 to 24, it means that understanding how to work in transcendental knowledge. They've copied this this handbook from Burijan's book, and he uses terms which are not what most people can understand, and it's a little bit irritating. It says understanding karma on the platform of jnana. Now, if you said that to most people, unless they're a little bit learned, even somebody who knows what they have to really think about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, in other words, karma means work, and jnana means knowledge. So, it describes, how to work in knowledge. That's a simple thing. If we don't work with knowledge, we won't maintain it. We'll think, what am I doing? And then it tells you about the 25 to 33, talks about the different sacrifices that we can do to develop knowledge. And then it concludes in 34 to 42, Tadvini pranipatena pranipashena sevaya, upadekshanti degyanam, yaninas tadvadasha, that the best way to obtain knowledge, or the most expedient way to obtain knowledge in the age we're living in, is to approach somebody who has that knowledge. That's a bona fide spiritual master. It's very rare to get the association of a pure devotee. So if we get that association, that's best, and that's what we've got in this age. So, and then it concludes in from 34 to 42, the result of that knowledge, the glories of transcendental knowledge. So it's quite logically put together. And so we'll just take, how many verses? There's 42 verses, and we've got how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So no, that's 8 verses each, isn't it? Okay, so maybe Jai Krishna can begin by reading the first verse.
The personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna, said, I instructed this imperishable science of yoga to the sun god, Vivashvan, and Vivashvan instructed it to Manu, father of mankind. Manu, in turn, instructed it to Ikshvaku. The supreme science was thus received through the chain of disciplic succession, and the saintly kings understood it in that way. But in course of time, the succession was broken, and therefore the science, as it appeared, to be lost.
So, this important point is that disciplic succession comes through spiritual masters and disciple, but it also comes through the saintly kings, because they're the guardians of religion. They called Henry VIII. Henry VIII was one of the infamous kings, actually, in the history of England. But still, he was actually, in the beginning, he actually defended Catholicism, the Catholic religion, against the Protestants. And so the Pope called him defender of the faith. And that's the duty of a king, to defend, to protect the people from lust. Of course, nowadays the leaders don't do that. They increase the lust. So that's why there's so many problems. Okay, so that's the first one. And it tells you how it's spoken by the Supreme Lord to the Sun God, and then to Vivasvan, then to Manu, the Swayambhuva Manu, the lawmaker for mankind, and then to Ikshvaku, who's the first king of the earth planet. All right, number 3. Carry on reading.
That very ancient science of the relationship with the Supreme is today told by me to you, because you are my devotee as well as my friend, and can therefore understand the transcendental mystery of this science. Arjuna said, the sun god, Vivashvan, is senior by birth to you. How am I to understand that in the beginning you instructed this science to him?
So remember, Arjuna doesn't know. It's still in illusion. He's still asking as if he was a conditioned soul. And he can't understand, that, Krishna is existing in all time, place, and circumstance, and is the origin of everything. And he's thinking that, how can Krishna, who's, took birth like more or less the same time as I did, how can he have instructed Vivasvan, who was, millions of years ago, was instructed in this subject matter? Okay. And the other point here is, if in this material world, it should be, and generally the principle is if you're actually expert in a particular activity, you'll get the job, right? You have an interview, and if you show your, and sometimes, somebody gets a job because they know somebody, right? So which path is devotional service then? Is it from knowledge or from knowing somebody? It's both, isn't it?
They're both, yeah.
Unless we know a friend of Krishna, well, we won't, Krishna don't think we're worth knowing, Unless we surrendered to somebody who's dear to Krishna, then it means we're not serious. So, that devotional friendship is so important to, to develop a relationship with a superior devotee. It's just like Prabhupada when he was on the Vyasasan. He was talking about, the qualification of coming to devotional service. And he was saying that we have to be 100% pure, and everybody they were really disappointed in the class. And then he said, well, 75%. and everybody were really disappointed. And then he said, okay, 50%. And everybody were really disappointed. And then he got up off the ascent and started walking out of the temple room. And he said, and he looked back at everybody and said, but I have the back door key. So in other words, just be sincere, and we get his blessings. So yeah, it's a case of who you know as well. Okay, carry on.
The personality of Godhead said, many, many births both you and I have passed. I remember all of them. You cannot, O subduer of the enemy. Although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form.
Yes, so he can remember because it doesn't change. Just imagine in this world, if nothing changes, you won't forget it, will you? It'll always be there, right? But in this world, everything's changing, so it goes out of mind, out of sight, out of mind, and then you forget it. So it's a practical understanding that Krishna doesn't have, nothing changes in the spiritual world, so nobody forgets anything. In this world, everything changes, so then in due course of time, it becomes lost to memory. Okay. What are we on now? 6.
Yeah, although I am unborn and my transcendental body never deteriorates, and although I am the Lord of all living entities, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. Whenever and wherever there is a decline in religious practice, O descendant of Bharata, and a predominant rise of irreligion, at that time I descend myself to deliver the pious, to annihilate the miscreant, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion. I myself appear millennium after millennium.
So his real purpose, he can kill the demons through his other representatives and through the material energy. And, so the main reason he appears, actually, does anybody know the main reason Krishna appears? Yeah?
He says, doesn't he, to
deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants. Is it?
Wait a minute. We've got it's not a free for all, You've got to put your hand up. If you don't know where the hand button is on the
right.
then you stick your hand up. so Jai Krishna stuck his hand up. We'll let him answer it.
To enliven the devotees, he says, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. He comes to appear before the devotees. That's his main purpose. Who've been longing to see him and, praying and practicing devotional service. He fulfills their desire. And at the same time, he arranges for religion to be preached as well. And as far as killing the demons, he doesn't have to appear. They're killing themselves by their activities. I was just on the beach just now. And, I was just thinking that, everybody's like, especially when they're young, they're proud of their bodies, and walloping sun lotion on and things like that. And, but, in the next birth, God knows where they'll be. You know what I mean? Everything's so auspicious, all looks so auspicious. But it's so inauspicious if we don't know how to use it. And so this Krishna appears to, remind them that, this temporary sense gratification, in a few years, it'll all be gone, and then we'll reap the rewards. It's really, what looks good is actually not so good. Anyway, I just thought I'd put that in. Okay, last one. Oh, you did it. Last one. Parishanaya sadhanam vinashayata duskitam. So that's the first 8. We've got another 2 to go before we get to the end of this particular section on understanding Krishna. So Maya Chandra, I approve. Do you want to read from 8 up to 16?
Yes, sure. So number 8, to deliver the pious and annihilate the miscreants, as well as to re-establish the principles of religion, I myself appear millennium after millennium. Text 9. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode, O Arjuna.
So what does it mean to understand Krishna's appearance and activities? It says in truth.
To understand his lila, his transcendental pastimes.
To understand his transcendental pastimes. And okay, that's okay. Jai Krishna Prabhu.
Is he making the point that he's not, yeah, he's not material. He's not as it kind of seems, and he's up to something else, and he is someone else, not kind of as he seems materially in the Bhagavad-gita.
Yeah, he's not like an ordinary person. That's one thing.
Yeah.
Because most people, when they, even in the Battle of Kurukshetra and around that time, all through Krishna's appearance, a lot of people just thought he was some empowered living entity or some kind of demigod. They didn't think he was a supreme lord. And so therefore they couldn't actually make any progress, according to this particular Leela anyway, of the Lord's. But, we understand that, it's beyond reproach. He's not subjected to the pushings and pullings of this material world, nor is he to blame for them. And that his sole purpose is to actually help the living entities. And there's a world beyond this where we can actually reside, If we understand that, then we understand his mission, don't we? And we can understand, how to, we become more enthusiastic about making progress. We could say it's to understand his Leela and his pastimes, but unless we understand these basic things, we won't understand properly his Leela and his pastimes in one respect. We'll actually see him as material. So that will come in due course of time. But first of all, before we can really go transcendental, we don't have to take birth in this material world again because we know the way out. So that's one way of looking at it. Okay, carry on. This next one's an important verse, number 10 as well.
Being freed from attachment, fear, and anger, being fully absorbed in me, and taking refuge in me, many persons in the past became purified by knowledge of me, and thus they all attained transcendental love for me.
Okay.
Okay.
So what are those three things? Attachment, fear, and anger. So that's a really nice purport. And if we read it, we can identify with one or more of these particular things that we have, which just keep maybe an obstacle to us, or it's like we find difficult to get over in order to go forward. Attachment, too much attached to, material sense gratification. Fear of what, we don't know what spiritual life is. Most people think when you tell them there's another birth after this, they're actually disappointed because they're having a rough time in this world. Oh my God, not again. So they're fearful, attachment, anger, that they've had so many philosophies and all of them, it doesn't really make sense. So it's just another philosophy, and they don't want to hear it. They become angry. Prabhupada said that type of person is like the hippies. So instead, they take some kind of intoxication as a spiritual way forward. Okay. Carry on.
Text 11. As all surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Everyone follows my path in all respects, O son of Pritha.
So this talks about the different spiritual paths. You know, if a person wants the impersonal Brahman and is serious, he'll get that. But it also relates to everybody in this world, that they're getting exactly what they want. The situation we're in now is what we desire, or what we desired. We're not here because Krishna's keeping us here against his will anymore. It's actually, there's still some attachment to the world. So, you know, Krishna has to reciprocate in kind to fulfill those desires. Otherwise, if he actually doesn't do that, what will happen? They'll pop up again in the future. It'll be even more difficult. So, carry on anyway.
Text 12.
So,
Men in this world desire success in fruitive activities, and therefore they worship the demigods. Quickly, of course, men get results from fruitive work in this world.
carry on.
According to the three modes of material nature and the work associated with them, the four divisions of human society are created by me. And although I am the creator of this system, you should know that I am yet the non-doer, being unchangeable.
So that's what we mentioned earlier about Krishna being transcendental, Janma Karma Chamedivyam. And in the verse 12, it's, you know, it's talking about demigod. Anyway, we don't have to say anything more about that. So 13, yeah, there's this 13, it's talking about Varnashram. And it starts in 13 by explaining that people in this world, you know, we tend to think that we are actually doing things. So that's the purport of 13. And therefore, you know, we're actually misunderstanding what's really happening. And then the next verse, 14, it says that it's actually the modes of nature are actually forcing us to do things, even though we don't realize it. We condition our mind, intelligence, and our body is being shoved by the modes of nature, even though we think we're in control. And then it says that we may say that, okay, then who's in charge of the modes of nature? It's Krishna, so he's to blame. And so that may be another way we actually try to understand the situation. But then the 15th verse, it explains that, you know, that the same point that Krishna is, you know, only fulfilling desires. He's allowing us to go under certain modes of nature, to act in a certain way, because we're desiring that. So this is a proper understanding. He is acting, because if you remember in verse 13, it says, I'm the non-doer, I don't act in this world. He doesn't act like a conditioned soul, but he fulfills desires, that's all. And so people tend to blame God, and then they can't go forward. So that's why verse 9, which we started with, says that one who understands that it's not like that, then he starts to make progress. Okay. We're on 14, is it?
Reclaim
Yeah.
house, stay participants.
What? We're on to 13, so carry on, my proper.
Yeah. There is no work that affects me, nor do I aspire for the fruits of action. One who understands this truth about me and also does not become entangled in the fruitive reactions of work.
Yeah. We can start to have faith in Krishna. Everything depends on faith when we understand the situation. And then, you know, by that faith, we can practice transcendental life where we can start to become free from our attachments. I'm saying transcendental life because the purports always talk about devotional service, but the actual translations are open for interpretation by the impersonalists and the personalists and the karma and those who want material desires. So it's actually bringing everybody in. It's leaving it home so that everybody can gradually become purified. This is mentioned in the last week's class as well. Okay, so what are we on to now?
Text 15.
15. 16, is it?
I read last time 14, Maharaj.
Okay. I'm saying this because I don't have a Bhagavad-gita here, and off my electronic gear here, it doesn't work because I can't connect to the internet. The phone's the only one I can use.
Sure.
Carry on.
All the liberated souls in ancient times acted with this understanding of my transcendental nature. Therefore, you should perform your duty following in their footsteps.
Okay. Next.
Even the intelligent are bewildered in determining what is action and what is inaction. Now I shall explain to you what action is, knowing which you shall be liberated from all misfortune.
Okay, so now we're starting a new section. Is that now we know how things are working, how we're being controlled by the modes, and Krishna's fulfilling desires, then how to work out of the modes. And so, this is something which is important, because even when I first read about devotional service, I thought, oh, I'll stop doing things. I'll just live a simple life so I don't become too karmically entangled. And but then later on I realized that wasn't the case, that there's a lot of work to do in devotional service. So I didn't understand in the beginning. I don't know whether anybody else had that realization. But anyway. And so he's saying now one who sees it's got three things. It's got karma, vikarma, and akarma. And it says one who sees action in inaction, and inaction in action is actually correctly situated. So how do we understand that? Action in one who sees inaction in action. So that means that a devotee, he acts, but because he's actually acting under the direction of, Krishna ultimately, then there's no karma. This is called akarma. So that's inaction in action. And then it talks about action in inaction. One who tries to renounce, then, he still has to breathe, he still has to live, he still has to eat, so he has to interact with the world. And if it's not in Krishna consciousness, he's actually stealing. So there'll be karma. It's actually action. There'll be he's trying to be inactive, but there's a reaction. So that's called vikarma, if we're just following his own mind and we're not following any scripture. And if we're following the scripture in how to act, but we're not rendering service to Krishna directly, then there will be some reaction. So this is called karma. We follow Shastra in order to act so we don't become degraded. But we're still using the world for our own personal satisfaction. So that mood of trying to enjoy is what's keeping us in this material world. So it's all a matter of the real thing is the consciousness. That's why they say to act in Krishna consciousness. And then there's no reaction. Okay, any questions on that? And how do we act? Dharmam tu sakshat bhagavat pranitam. In Bhagavatam, it says real religious principles are coming from the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So through his scriptures. Okay. So does Barbara want to read next?
Yeah. Okay. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is.
You have to speak up a bit, Matadri. I can't hear.
Sorry. The intricacies of action are very hard to understand. Therefore, one should know properly what action is, what forbidden action is, and what inaction is. One who sees inaction in action and action in inaction is intelligent amongst men, and he is in the transcendental position, although engaged in all sorts of activities. One is understood to be in full knowledge, whose every endeavour is devoid of desire for sense gratification. It is said by sages to be a worker for whom the reactions of work have been burnt up by the fire of perfect knowledge. Abandoning all attachment to the result of his activities, ever satisfied and independent, he performs no figurative action, although engaged in all kinds of undertakings. Such a man of understanding. Sorry,
Is that 20?
21 now, we're 2.
Okay, just stop a minute. Okay. Okay, carry on.
Such a man of understanding acts with mind and intelligence perfectly controlled, gives up all sense of proprietorship over his possessions, and acts only for the bare necessities of life. Thus, working, he is not affected by sinful reactions. He is satisfied with gain which comes from its own accord, who is free from duality and does not envy, who is steady in both success and failure, is never entangled although performing actions. The work of a man who is unattached to the modes of material nature and who is fully situated in transcendental knowledge merges entirely into transcendence.
In other words, what it's saying is that there's no reaction. It becomes an activity which is devoid of any karmic reaction. Therefore, it must be a transcendental activity which is free from that. It's free from the laws of material nature. And this is why we can do everything for Krishna if it's actually, if it's properly monitored by, an experienced devotee. It's just a matter of, why are we doing it? I think I mentioned this last week. From my experience, I sometimes get things wrong. I don't know whether anybody else does.
I certainly do.
And we feel a little bit down. I got that wrong. But I always think that I might have got it wrong. But was my intention good? I know they say the road to hell is paved with good intention, but what was I trying to please, or was I trying to actually be Krishna conscious and trying to please either Krishna or my spiritual master or both? Was I acting that way? And I just actually, out of inexperience, I messed up. And if we do that, it's not really that bad. You know what I mean? We can learn from our mistakes and then rectify. Main thing is that our intentions was good. But we don't have to make so many mistakes, though, if we're, a little bit attentive to checking first with the other devotees, or checking with the spiritual master if we have that association. And then we can avoid making too many mistakes. This is why, we can be surprised sometimes how some devotees, they may externally appear to be a little bit loose, that they don't follow so strictly. Anyway, we're not going to that. But we can't tell what a person's mentality is sometimes. Sometimes somebody is so badly conditioned that they keep making mistakes, but the heart's in the right place. You know what I mean? So we have to take that into consideration as well. So therefore, we don't actually judge anybody in devotional service, because we really don't know what their consciousness is like because of their conditioning. They may not be able to act the way we think they should. Anyway, that's just a personal experience. Okay, where did you get to? It started at 17 and went up to 24, was it?
Yeah.
Okay, so we can change speakers now. Anthony, would you like to read?
Yeah. Are we on 24 or 25?
We're on 25.
24.
We're on 24. Huh?
Yeah.
A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. Some yogis perfectly worship demigods by offering different sacrifices to them, and some of them offer sacrifices in the fire of the Supreme Brahman.
So these are the, from this verse 26 up to 29, or 25 up to 29. These are the different ways people perform some, sacrifice. In other words, sacrifice means that we sacrifice what we want to do for what is actually beneficial. To make, it means in Latin, it means to make sacred. You know what I mean? To sanctify our life by the activities we perform. We're sacrificing our tendencies to do what is actually necessary. So first one is demigod worship. Some people worship the demigods. At least they're accepting a higher power than themselves. That's good. Or, understanding the absolute truth is actually an energy. At least they're accepting some higher authority again. 26.
Text 26. Some, the unadulterated brahmacharyas, sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses.
Yeah, so brahmachari, his main purpose is to, we all have to have a rasa, a taste in this life. So, usually the taste is for the opposite sex. It's not just necessarily the gross sex life, but, they complement one another, a man and woman, and it forms a relationship. And so we get some juice from that relationship, but at least for some time. And then, but a brahmachari, he's got to avoid that. So he has to get a taste from something else. And so he gets a taste from studying Shastra. It actually nourishes him. So, and what do they call it? Svadhyaya, self-study. So a brahmachari will absorb himself in understanding the goal of life. And a grihastha will, although they're actually enjoying their life in grihastha life, they're actually following rules and regulations in order that it's actually in line with what Krishna says. So therefore, they're actually making the married life sacred, or an ashram. So the tendency to enjoy is very strong, but they're limited to rules and regulations of grihastha life. That's what it means. Okay, carry on.
Text 27. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. Yeah,
so it's Ashtanga yoga. They perform Ashtanga yoga to bring the mind under control and use the mind to reject sense gratification and focus on a goal. So the goal will be, if they get the association of a devotee of Krishna, the goal will be Krishna. If they get the association of an impersonalist, the goal will be impersonal Brahman. But still, you know, they're controlling the senses. 28.
28. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge.
Okay. Charity, giving for the right cause. It's means we're becoming more detached by giving away our possessions. And study of the Vedas we've mentioned, Ashtanga Yoga we've mentioned, austerity. People, you know, control the senses and by performing austere activities. Okay, and then 29 is also Ashtanga Yoga, is breath control, is part of the system. Carry on.
I think Jai Krishna's got his hand up there.
Yeah.
These are all the things Krishna advises Arjuna to abandon later on, aren't they? Saying, don't bother with that, just do this sort of thing.
Yeah, he does. Next.
Text 29.
We'll come to that in a minute, just a minute.
Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint to remain in trance practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming, and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping or breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offer the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice.
Anyway, I don't advise anybody to try this.
Text.
That's why Krishna told Arjuna to reject it. He just choked himself.
Text 30. All these performers who know the meaning of the sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifice, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere.
Yes, so when we perform austerities afterwards, we feel some benefit, don't we? Like, you know, just for a gross example, you go to the gym, and you do a workout, and you feel like, you know, it's painful. But afterwards, you know, you feel healthy and strong.
Mm.
So that's the principle, that when you know, perform some tapasya or sacrifice, then, you know, it actually has a good effect, either a materially good effect, but better, a spiritually good effect. So later in the next few verses, we'll hear how the result hereafter is that by performing these particular things, their awareness increases and they become more aware that there's more to life than just trying to enjoy the senses, but they start to become more, they may get a material goal, but they become attracted to controlling the senses. So they're gaining knowledge in that way, that to control the senses is actually helping me. But this is just a material thing. If we actually get transcendental knowledge along with that, you know, austerity or sacrifice, then that's a real goal. And we get that from, you know, having the right association also, you know, reading the right books, having the right association to guide us. So it says it's better when the end is knowledge, not just a material boon for some time. So we'll read that next. What we on now, 30 what?
We're on 31. So text,
Okay.
text 31. O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. What then of the next? Text
Yeah,
30.
so that's just what we've been saying, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah. Text 32.
Yeah.
All these different types of sacrifice are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated.
Yeah, according to your tendency, some people work with the mind, some people work with the intelligence, a lot of people work with the body. So these things, we can choose which ones to follow in order to suit our conditioning, our material conditioning. Okay.
So that was 32. Is it somebody else to go
So,
next?
so now, yeah, it should be. Well, does Maya Purishvari want to read, or are you abstaining this week? Okay, so maybe we'll go back to Jai Krishna again, because I can't read. I haven't got a book.
Okay.
1 minute, Maharaj.
I can carry on, no problem there. Want me to?
Well, carry on for 4 verses, and then let Jai Krishna finish off.
Text 33. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possession. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. Text 34. Just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-controlled, the self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth.
Yes, so that's the answer to Jai Krishna's question, that all these other processes are for people who have not been fortunate to come straight to the path of Bhakti Yoga. And so Krishna's telling Arjuna to perform Bhakti Yoga. In other words, do what I tell you to do. And because we don't have Krishna's personal association, we do what his representative tells us to do, the spiritual master. And he engages in such a way that we can actually, perform all these, the results of all those other activities are actually done just by hearing from a spiritual master and acting. So this is a higher, we can act immediately on the platform of Bhakti Yoga. Okay.
Is that the same as, is that like 1866?
Yes,
Similar?
it can be, but if we understand Krishna, if we do abandon all vices of religion, we're in full knowledge of Krishna, and we're knowledgeable about how to render devotional service, then 1866 is applicable, yeah. But, it may be that we're abandoning all vices of religion, and we don't really know, we may not even know Krishna very well. So that's not the same.
Right.
But we're getting knowledge. So by the time we come to 1866, we've left behind our particular faith, and we've left behind the process of impersonal understanding, this understanding, but we're just interested in Bhakti Yoga, devotional service. Then that's applicable.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. So text 35. Having obtained real knowledge from the self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. Text 36. Oh, sorry.
Go on, carry on.
Text 36. Even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in the boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries.
Yeah, so when we're actually fixed up in knowledge, we don't do any nonsense. We just realize, we're not even attracted to it. And because we realize that everybody is part and parcel of Krishna, some are in illusion, some are not. Why should I remain in illusion? Carry on.
Text 37. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions to material activities.
Yeah, when we understand something, when we, you know, when we understand it at heart, then we won't carry on in the same way. It'll change our heart. Carry on.
Text 38. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time.
Yeah. Okay, Jai Krishna, do you want to finish off?
A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge, and having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. But ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his activities, his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reaction, work, or conqueror riches. Therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. Now.
So that's the result of hearing about Krishna. That's why we're told to hear and hear and hear. And eventually, you know, it penetrates through our ignorance. And I was going to say something else, and I forgot what it was. Anyway, so this is the main thing. That's it. What's the result of knowledge? What's real knowledge? Real knowledge means understanding who we are and, you know, what our service and relationship is with Krishna. That's real knowledge. That's what we forgot. And when we act on that platform, and we actually it's a platform of bliss. When we reciprocate in a relationship, we want some juice from it. So when we reciprocate with Krishna properly, there's no question of having happiness. It's just that we're blissful all the time. That's transcendental knowledge is prema, ultimately, pure love of God. And then, you know, because we're feeling it, you know, nothing's going to sway us from it. You can say what you want, but I've got prema, you know what I mean? We're completely satisfied. Okay, any questions? All right, so I know some of you have got to run off. You're in a rush, so I'll stop there. But anyway, we should meditate on this chapter and then meditate on the next one for the next class. Hopefully, we have to have it on a weekend and Saturday. I don't know whether everybody's going to be missing on Saturday every week. We'll have to ask around and see what's the practical time to do it. But, you know, Saturday's a busy day, but depending on our priorities, you know, we can put devotional, we can put this Bhagavad-gita in our itinerary, if it's possible. Okay, thank you very much, and have a good week. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you, everyone.